Hey guys, today we're looking at the Matchbox British Infantry in 176 scale. As you can see by the box here, you have the typical Matchbox fare of the figures depicted on a piece of high ground in the middle of a kind of an action scene with shell bursts all around them and what have you, the usual detritus of war at their feet. As you can see there from the left, at the back we have a guy advancing with a bayonet, lad with a flamethrower, which is kind of a generic kind of a flamethrower really, lad with a mortar, Vickers a machine gunner and crewman. You also have a Bren gunner, an officer in the back, lad firing what looks like a number 4 Lee Enfield, and a chap with a bazooka, which is probably inaccurate, as the British during the Second World War, as far as I know, didn't really use the bazooka. They used the Piet as an anti-tank device, the bazooka being more of an American issue weapon. And the bazooka depicted here in this image, and indeed on the figure itself, looks more like the M20 bazooka, which, as far as I know, came later in the evolution of that particular weapon, but might have been used by the British in the Korean conflict as opposed to the Second World War. In the far right, then, you have a lad with a Sten gun. So that's the front of the box, usual Doug Post kind of a thing, real indicative of the period. I love Doug's work. Most of the Matchbox stuff was done, and the figures were done by Doug, and I like them all. On the side here, as usual, you have a depiction of the figures that are contained within the box itself, which is handy for a painting guide as well. So you can see the various figures laid out there. 176 scale, as we say. This is one of the first boxes of figures that Matchbox actually released. The release date here is down as 1975. Same release date as myself. Having said that, I've seen it referenced as 1976 on Plastic Soldier Review website and somewhere else. Painting guide. Usual Matchbox scenario, very simple, very straightforward. These paint colours here pertain to the Humbrol range. When I'm painting them up, I generally try my best to be as loyal to the original colour schemes as possible. The odd time you'll see the colour schemes here might have changed slightly as regards the numbers, so just double check. Some of these would be old reference numbers, but there are plenty of conversion charts online, so you won't have a problem finding that. Picture depicted, or the figure depicted here, standard battle dress, a black beret, walkie-talkie. Not sure how accurate that is to the period, but possibly maybe it is. What is definitely inaccurate, however, is the submachine gun he's holding there, which I suppose was probably supposed to be a Sten, but in actual fact it's a Sterling, which came a little bit later on. I think in the 50s or early 60s, the Sterling was issued to British forces and served right up until certainly the Falklands conflict and probably beyond. That particular figure that's depicted here turned up in one of the die-cast metal sets as well, so it was probably just a question of convenience. They had a figure moulded or sculpted, and there you go, it was just easy to use it. Because the figures that came with the, I can't remember which particular kit it was, or vehicle it was, but also came with some men using the SLR 7.62mm battle rifle as well. So, on the other side of the box here, you have some crew-served weapons. You have 303 Vickers, very basic depiction, and the assistant as well. You have the mortar, which again is a very straightforward, basic depiction with 2 mortar crew. The aforementioned bazooka, and a Bren gunner firing from the hip, which wouldn't be being the usual way to handle that weapon all the time. Of course, it's quite possible to do so. It is quite it's an easy enough weapon to lift up and to manoeuvre around. I have handled one on several occasions myself, but I wouldn't want to be carrying it around all day. But I suppose a bit of adrenaline coursing through you, you could be capable of a lot of things. On the other side of the box here, or the end of the box should I say, you have further depictions of the rifleman and Bren gunner there. You also have a rather dapper looking British officer who has his standard issue moustache, as is required by all British officers in World War II apparently. Not really, but it seems that way. The picture here doesn't depict him in exactly accurate terms as regards the pose. As you can see on the side of the box here, he actually has his arm extended and is pointing in some some direction basically. But that's that. So that's the box artwork there, very straightforward, usual, as I say, Matchbox scenario. Let's have a little look down at the figures themselves here, just to see what we got. Okay, so I'll start off with the officer because he's the nearest to us. So here he is here, sort of, I just did it in, as I say, the basic colours, very straightforward. As usual, a rub of Mullen Oil by Citadel over them, just to give them a little bit of shading in that. And the usual disclaimer, I'm not the greatest figure painter in the world by any stretch of the imagination. It's purely for wargaming and my own pleasure, so at the end of the day, a little bit of forgiveness there, guys, please. Other kind of officer figures here. Oops, just put it to the side there. You have a guy with the walkie-talkie as depicted on the back of the box. Quite good there. I've utilised that in both of these figures for other battalions such as paratroopers, Royal Marines, or should I say commandos, things like that. Berry is very, very handy. Also the guy on the left, which some people say is a tank man because of the, I presume because of the way that the holster is slung to the leg low down, and with the strap that goes around the thigh, then that would be indicative of a Royal Tank Regiment uniform or issue. Quite possibly, yeah. I've used that figure as a commander for tanks. Just chop off the legs and stick him in the turret in the past. No problem at all. So that's those guys. Crew serve weapons. You have the mortar here, of course, again. Again, very straightforward Matchbox mortar. They're same mortar for all their figures, apart from in the NATO paratroopers, which is a kind of a more slender piece, as you can see there. I just use beer mats to base them on, as I've said before in other videos. Very straightforward, very easy. So that's the mortar. And the Vickers here. Again, basic description or depiction of a Vickers. Yeah, I like the ammo belt there as well. It's the only bit of detail on the weapon, really. It's quite nice. Again, very straightforward. Classic Matchbox, turned up in the larger scale range as well. What are they, 132 or thereabouts? In the front here, what do we have? Two riflemen kneeling and standing. Again, it's easy to see there that they have the number 4 rifle as opposed to the SMLE Mark III, or Mark III Star, which had a slightly more snub nose sort of a frontage to it at the muzzle. So these guys here, some of them have the backpack on the back, and some of them don't. And you can see the bayonet is sheathed there as well. So, nice enough. Very straightforward. They are smaller than 176, you know, so just if you are matching up with larger figures, just be careful there. They might look a little out. Doesn't really bother me too much, but then again, I'm usually just using them on my Wargames table. I'm not offending anyone in a club or competition or anything like that, so it's just at my own house, and off we go. Here's the Sten gunner there. Very crouched sort of a figure. I find him a little bit stiff. I don't know, just could be done a little bit better, I think, myself, but not too bad. Nice to see the Sten depicted as well. There you go. No Thompsons depicted in this particular range, actually, as they were in the Commandos and the 8th Army also. Flamethrower, not sure how accurate the flamethrower is there. I think the British flamethrower is a more rounded affair at the back. I could be incorrect in saying that, but this looks more like a kind of a generic affair. It's quite similar to the ones sculpted on the German and American figures also. So I'd be just convenience sake for the sculptor. But still, it's nice to have a flamethrower, particularly if you're wargaming. Bren gunner there, as we were talking about earlier. Quite a nice classic Matchbox pose as well. I think that really does kind of evoke memories of childhood playing with those figures, particularly in a larger scale. What else have we here? Guy advancing, and guy stabbing someone on the ground, I presume. I've read somewhere that the bayonet, there's complaints that the bayonets were very short. I would disagree. I'd say they're probably okay. I believe the 07 or 08 pattern bayonet, which would normally be found on the Mark III rifle as opposed to the Mark IV, would have been longer. It would have been up to at least 12 inches, probably more. whereas on the number 4 they had various different types of bayonets. Some of them were literally just a little spike, and having handled a few of those, they're not particularly long, and I suppose for convenience sake, for manufacturer, they were just basically a little spike that you put on into the rifle to give you a little extra bit of reach in hand-to-hand situations. So that's this guy here. Again, fairly straightforward sculpt, as you can see, Bayonet. Again, these guys, I'm not overly fond of these poses. Kind of find that there's never anyone really to interact with them from an opponent's perspective. Some guy, wriggling on the ground in his last agony or something. So I'm not overly fond of those poses, but here we go. Matchbox tendency to show guys throwing a grenade with no weapon. The same happened in the Africa Corps and the Japanese box as well. Kind of prefer if they had a weapon on them, but he could have had it in his hand like the commando did, or the German infantryman, but they just choose to do it this way. Same as the American guy and, as I say, the Japanese guy. But still a classic Matchbox pose again. Looks pretty good. The American version of this particular sculpt, the American Infantry set, had some extra grenades on the figure itself, which they didn't put on this one, which is unfortunate, I think, because it would have been nice just to have them on there. Here's the advancing officer. Kind of a classic pose there as well. Again, I've utilised this guy in other ways, and as I say, he's been a paratrooper and he's been a commando in various battalions for my rapid fire and wargaming. Here's the aforementioned bazooka we were talking about earlier. As I say, probably not accurate to World War II, but probably okay if you were doing some Korean War wargaming or something like that. Having said that, I mean, I do have them painted up, and I would use them in rapid fire, and I would just apply the rules to just represent a Piat gunner. From that perspective, the Matchbox didn't provide a Piat, so I have to provide my own. It'll have to be the bazooka guy. Now, as with all the figures of the Matchbox range, we're very lucky that Revell, German company, saw fit to re-release them. This one was released in 2011, so luckily enough we have a box here. Again, I'm not overly fond of the artwork on the Revell stuff. It just doesn't do it for me. Kind of a modern take on the old theme. There's so many, I don't know, things wrong with these depictions. For example, the multitude of kind of 1970s porno moustaches on display here. But hey, however, at least it does depict the weapons correctly and so on, even if the figures themselves mightn't be 100% accurate, but how bad, it's okay. On the side again, usual scenario with Revell. Painting guide on the back here, which pertains to their own paints. That's fair enough, it's their product after all. Very, very basic, straightforward. Looking up at the British infantry, it's never going to be overly complicated. No crazy camouflage patterns being used there like with the Germans and that, so quite handy, quite straightforward. The usual scenario, they have a little bit of blurb on the side there, mentions Operation Overlord and Juno Beach and Weestrom and Armanche and Caen, those kind of places. That's fine, that's fair enough. Basic box, I mean, it comes with the sprue and it comes with a little warning sheet, as they always do, saying, don't feed plastic soldiers to your children if they're under 3, which is fair enough. I won't. The sprue itself, just have it separated there. So here's the sprue. Turn it right around. Again, there you have the basic sprue that Matchbox issued. So you get 2 of the guys up near the top left corner, kind of waving. A bit of a waste. I always thought having 2 of those kind of poses. 4 of the kneeling riflemen, 4 of the advancing guy with the bayonet, 2 bazookas, 2 Vickers, which is great. 5 of the guys stabbing on the ground, actually 5 of the advancing infantrymen as well, the bayonet, I meant to say. Always found that's far too many poses of that particular one altogether. 2 would have been plenty, and we could have had a few different poses then incorporated, but that's just the way they were at the time. What have we got here on this one? You have your Sten gunners, you have your Bren gunners, you have the assistants for the Vickers there, guy with the walkie-talkie, and even extra runner there, hadn't spotted him. The mortar, of course, as usual, down there, and the crewmen are there and there, and officers in that as well. Again, you get two of these guys with officers pointing, which, to be honest, is far too many. I think it's a bit ridiculous having that many officers of that position represented in the box. There's just no need for it. It's a pose wasted, if you ask me. But still, they're well done. I can't fault them. In fairness, the sculpt is good, and you have to look at these things in context. I mean, these are made literally. They're over 40 years ago. Times have changed. Demands have changed as regards to customer. The little kids who were playing with these 40 years ago are now men in their 40s or 50s or whatever. So, technology is advanced. So you have to view these things in context, I think. So that was the Revell re-release. So again, there we go. There's Doug Post's representation of the contents of that particular box. Matchbox, as I say, my favourite. I use quite a lot of them in the wargaming. Might use other figures, of course, as well, and other ranges, but these are my favourite from a sentimentality perspective. And that's basically what we have for you with the British Infantry. Just a little look at them there again, just to see. As I say, I paint them up in battalions of roughly 50 for rapid fire. When I'm doing some rapid fire review stuff, I can go through some of those things with you as well. But for the meantime, I'm going to sign off and leave you with this image of Doug Post's representation of the British Infantry by Matchbox in 1/76 scale. Thanks very much for watching, guys. We'll talk to you again soon. All the best.